Aaliyah burst through the door of her home, her small backpack bouncing against her back with every hurried step. The afternoon sun streamed through the windows, casting a warm glow in the cozy living room, filled with the comforting scent of her mother's cooking wafting from the kitchen. Today had been full of laughter and learning, and she couldn't wait to share her excitement with her father, Marcus, who she knew would be just finishing his shift at work. "Dad, you won't believe what I did today," Aaliyah called out, her bright eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. She kicked off her shoes and dashed toward the kitchen, her ponytail swinging energetically behind her. But as she entered the kitchen, her heart sank. There sat Marcus at the table, his brow furrowed in a deep frown, a half-empty coffee cup forgotten beside him. The sight of her father's worried face sent a ripple of unease through her. The animated chatter she had prepared in her mind evaporated, replaced by a gnawing feeling that something was wrong. "Aaliyah," he said, looking up as she entered. His voice was steady but tinged with concern. "How was school today?" "It was great. We had our class, and I painted a picture of a unicorn." She forced a smile, but the enthusiasm didn't quite reach her eyes. Aaliyah could feel the tension in the air, a thick cloud that seemed to hover between them. Marcus studied her for a moment, his expression softening. "That sounds wonderful, sweetheart, but you look a bit different. Is there something you want to tell me?" Aaliyah hesitated, her heart racing. She had wanted to tell him about her day, about the fun moments she shared with her friends, but now that she was confronted with his serious demeanor, a shadow of doubt crept in. "It's just, I don't know, Dad," she said, her voice trailing off. "I think I might have gotten in trouble on the bus." "Trouble?" Marcus repeated, leaning forward, his concern intensifying. "What do you mean?" Taking a deep breath, Aaliyah felt the weight of the day pressing down on her. "Dad, the bus driver did it again," she finally managed, her voice trembling slightly. The words hung heavily in the air, and Marcus's heart sank as he recognized the fear in her eyes. "What do you mean, did it again?" he asked, kneeling down to her level, his hands resting gently on her shoulders. "Please, tell me exactly what happened." Aaliyah looked down at her feet, shuffling nervously. "I asked if I could sit with my friend Lily because she had a new book to show me. But the driver yelled at me. He said I shouldn't be talking so much and called me a distraction in front of everyone." Her voice cracked slightly, and she met her father's gaze, searching for reassurance. Marcus felt a surge of anger wash over him. "What? He yelled at you?" He clenched his fists involuntarily, trying to process the injustice of it all. "That's not right, Aaliyah. You were just trying to sit with a friend." "I know, Dad, but he said it loudly, and everyone looked at me. I felt so embarrassed," Aaliyah replied, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I just wanted to have fun on the bus like everyone else." Marcus's protective instincts kicked in, and he couldn't help but feel a swell of rage. "You deserve to feel safe and respected, especially on your way to and from school," he said firmly, his voice steady even as his emotions churned. "I'm so sorry you had to go through that. No one should be treated that way, especially not you, my brave girl." Aaliyah nodded, her expression softening at her father's words. "I just don't want to get in trouble again. What if he gets mad at me for telling? What if he doesn't let me sit with my friends anymore?" She was clearly distressed, and the thought of facing the bus driver again filled her with dread. "Listen to me," Marcus said, his tone gentle yet unwavering. "You have every right to speak up about how you're treated. I want you to feel safe and happy, and if that means we have to talk to someone about this, then we will. You are not alone in this." Aaliyah's heart swelled at her father's words, and she felt a flicker of hope amidst her fears. "Do you really mean it?" "Absolutely," Marcus replied, pulling her into a comforting embrace. "We're going to figure this out together. No one should make you feel small or scared. You're strong, Aaliyah, and I will always be here to support you." After a moment, Aaliyah pulled back, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "Thanks, Dad. I just want to go to school and enjoy being with my friends." "It's not fair." Marcus nodded, his mind racing. He thought of all the times he had reassured Aaliyah, teaching her about the importance of standing up for herself and others. But now, faced with the reality of her pain, he felt a fire ignite within him. Let's take a moment to think about our next steps. I want you to know that your feelings are valid, and we will address this. Okay, Aaliyah said, her voice steadier now. But what if he doesn't listen? We'll make him listen, Marcus replied, determination lacing his words. We'll find the right people to talk to, and we'll make sure you're heard. You deserve to have your voice respected, especially when it comes to your safety. With a newfound sense of resolve, Marcus stood up, glancing towards the window as he formulated a plan. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the kitchen, reminding him that time was of the essence. Let's think about who we can reach out to, he suggested, turning back to Aaliyah, who was looking at him with a mix of hope and trepidation. Maybe the principal, she ventured, or the school counselor? Those are great ideas, Marcus replied, feeling a surge of pride at her willingness to engage in the conversation. We can also reach out to the bus company. They need to know what's happening. If the bus driver is treating you that way, it's possible he's doing the same to other kids. Aaliyah nodded, her eyes wide. You think other kids are having the same problem? It's possible, Marcus said, his brow furrowing as he considered the implications. And if that's the case, we need to make sure it gets addressed. We're not just going to sit back and let this happen. As they sat together at the kitchen table, Aaliyah felt a surge of gratitude for her father's support. She knew that together they would face whatever challenges lay ahead. Thanks, Dad. I feel a little better knowing we're going to do something about it. Marcus smiled, feeling a warmth spread through him. You're welcome, sweetheart. Remember, you're never alone in this. We'll tackle it together, step by step. With a newfound sense of purpose, Aaliyah and Marcus began to discuss a plan, mapping out their next moves. The kitchen, once filled with a sense of dread, transformed into a space of determination and hope. They were ready to confront the issues head-on, united in their fight for justice and understanding. As the sun began to set, casting a golden hue across the room, Marcus knew that this was just the beginning of their journey. The road ahead might be challenging, but he was determined to protect his daughter and ensure her voice was heard. Together, they would navigate the complexities of their community and seek the resolution that Aaliyah deserved. Marcus's heart raced as he stared at the glowing screen of his phone, his fingers trembling slightly as he dialed 911. The oppressive weight of fear for his daughter pressed down on him, mingling with a surge of protective anger that made it difficult to focus on the words he needed to say. Aaliyah's frightened eyes haunted him. It felt as if the bus driver's harsh words had echoed in the walls of their home. The ringing on the other end felt interminable. 911. What's your emergency? The calm voice of the operator broke through his anxious thoughts, pulling him back to the moment. Yes, I need to report a situation involving a school bus driver, Marcus said, his voice steadier than he felt. My daughter is scared to ride the bus after what happened today. She was verbally abused by the driver. He could hear the operator typing, her attention fully on him. Can you tell me exactly what happened, sir? Marcus took a deep breath, feeling the frustration bubbling inside him. My daughter, Aaliyah, asked to sit with a friend, and the driver yelled at her in front of the other kids. He called her names, and it made her feel humiliated and frightened. She hasn't stopped crying since she got home. Sir, I understand your concerns, the operator replied, her voice soothing but firm. We will dispatch someone to the bus company to look into this. Can you provide the name of the bus company? Marcus quickly shared the information, each word punctuated by the urgency of his emotions. I just want someone to take this seriously. My daughter shouldn't have to feel this way about something as simple as getting to school. I understand, the operator reassured him. We'll send someone to investigate. After hanging up, Marcus felt a mix of relief and frustration. He wanted immediate action, not just another report filed away to gather dust. The thought of Aaliyah sitting on that bus, vulnerable and scared, ignited a fire within him. He glanced at her, who had retreated to the corner of the living room, her small frame curled up on the couch, clutching a stuffed animal as if it were a lifeline. Stay here, baby, okay? I'm going to take care of this, he said, his voice softening as he approached her. He knelt down to her level and brushed a few stray curls from her face. You're brave, Aaliyah, and I'm proud of you for telling me what happened. I'm going to find out who this driver is and make sure he understands how wrong he was. Aaliyah nodded, her big brown eyes glistening with unshed tears. But what if he gets mad at you, Dad? What if he does it again? I won't let that happen, he promised, his voice firm. I'll be right there, and I'm going to make sure that no one else has to go through what you did. You deserve to feel safe. With that reassurance, Marcus grabbed his car keys and stormed out of the house, determination fueling his steps. As he drove through the quiet suburban streets, a mix of anger and anxiety coursed through him. The bus company loomed ahead, a nondescript building that felt like a fortress of indifference. He pulled into the parking lot, the gravel crunching under his tires, and took a moment to compose himself before stepping out of the car. Inside, the lobby was sterile and unwelcoming, the fluorescent lights casting a harsh glare on the linoleum floors. A receptionist sat behind a desk, her head buried in paperwork. Marcus approached, his heart pounding in his chest. "Excuse me, I need to speak to someone about a serious issue regarding one of your bus drivers," he said, his voice steady despite the tension coiling in his stomach. The receptionist glanced up, her expression detached. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, I don't," Marcus replied, frustration seeping into his tone. "But I need to speak to a supervisor now." She sighed, rolling her eyes slightly, but picking up the phone. "Okay, just a moment." Minutes stretched into what felt like an eternity as he waited, pacing the small area, his mind racing with thoughts of Aaliyah's distress. He could still hear her voice trembling as she recounted the incident, and it fueled his resolve to be her advocate. Finally, a middle-aged man with thinning hair and a weary expression emerged from a door marked management. "I'm sorry for the wait. I'm Mr. Thompson, the operations manager. How can I help you?" "Thank you for seeing me," Marcus said, forcing himself to remain calm. "I'm here about a bus driver who verbally abused my daughter, Aaliyah. She was humiliated in front of her peers, and I need to understand what actions you're taking regarding this situation." Mr. Thompson's brow furrowed as he listened. "I'm sorry to hear that. Can you tell me what happened?" Marcus recounted the incident, his voice rising with indignation as he described Aaliyah's fear and humiliation. "This isn't just a simple misunderstanding. Aaliyah is terrified to ride the bus now, and she shouldn't have to feel that way. I need to know what you're going to do about it." The supervisor leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, and regarded Marcus with a skeptical expression. "I understand your concern, but we haven't received any previous complaints about this driver. He has a clean record." "That doesn't mean he hasn't done something wrong," Marcus replied, his voice rising. "Just because others haven't spoken up doesn't mean my daughter's experience isn't valid. She's scared, and that's what matters." "I understand," Mr. Thompson said cautiously, "but without prior complaints, it's hard to take immediate action. I can assure you we'll look into this. We'll talk to the driver and get his side of the story." "That's not enough," Marcus exclaimed, frustration boiling over. "My daughter is not just a name on a report. She's a child who deserves to feel safe and respected. I want to see real action taken to ensure this doesn't happen to her or anyone else." The operations manager held up a hand, his expression hardening slightly. "I'll pass your concerns along, but I can't promise any immediate changes. We have protocols to follow." Marcus took a deep breath, trying to rein in his anger. "I'll be following up on this," he stated, his tone resolute. "And if I don't see any action taken, I will take this further to the school and beyond." Mr. Thompson nodded, his demeanor unchanging. "That's your right, sir. We'll be in touch." As Marcus left the bus company, a sense of defeat washed over him. The building felt cold and unyielding, just like the response he'd received. He couldn't shake the frustration that bubbled within him. He had come to protect his daughter, to be her voice, but instead, he felt like he had hit a wall. Sitting in his car, he closed his eyes and took a deep breath, allowing the silence to envelop him for a moment. He thought of Aaliyah sitting at home, her innocence shattered by someone who was supposed to take care of her during those rides to school. He couldn't let this go. He needed to advocate for her, not just as her father, but as a member of the community who believed that every child had the right to feel safe and respected. Driving home, he formulated a plan. He wouldn't stop at the bus company. He would take his concerns to the school. They needed to be aware of the situation, to understand that Aaliyah's experience was part of a larger issue. Children should be able to ride the bus without fear. And if no one else was willing to stand up for them, he would. That evening, he sat down with Aaliyah, who had finally emerged from her corner, her stuffed animal still clutched tightly in her arms. "Hey, sweetheart," he said softly, gesturing for her to sit beside him. "I talked to the bus company today, but it didn't go as I hoped." "What happened?" Aaliyah asked, her voice small. "They didn't take it as seriously as I wanted them to," he admitted, feeling a pang of guilt wash over him. "But I'm not done. I'm going to talk to your school tomorrow. They need to know what's happening." Aaliyah's eyes widened with a mixture of fear and hope. "Do you think they can help?" "I really believe they can," Marcus replied, determination lacing his words. "We're going to make sure no one else has to feel like you did. You're brave, and we're going to get through this together." As the evening wore on, Aaliyah found comfort in her father's unwavering support. The fear that had clouded her heart began to dissipate, replaced by a flicker of hope. Together, they would fight for her right to feel safe, and she realized she wasn't alone in this battle. Marcus stepped into the bus company's waiting area, the air heavy with the scent of stale coffee and the low hum of fluorescent lighting. His heart raced as he scanned the room, taking in the rows of empty plastic chairs and the bored expressions of the receptionist behind the counter. She barely looked up from her computer, tapping away as if Marcus's presence was nothing more than a passing breeze. "Excuse me," he said, his voice firm but edged with urgency. The receptionist finally met his gaze, her brow slightly furrowed, but she remained silent. Marcus cleared his throat, summoning every ounce of composure he could muster. "I need to speak to someone about a serious issue concerning one of your drivers." She raised an eyebrow, her expression unimpressed. "Do you have an appointment?" "No," he replied, his frustration mounting. "But this is an urgent matter regarding my daughter. She's been mistreated on the bus, and I need to talk to a supervisor right now." The receptionist sighed, leaning back in her chair. "You'll have to wait. They're in a meeting." Marcus felt a flush of anger rise within him. "I can't wait. My daughter is scared to ride the bus because of this driver. I'm not leaving until I speak to someone who can help." With a reluctant roll of her eyes, she picked up the phone and muttered something into the receiver. After a moment, she hung up, still looking disinterested. "Someone will be with you shortly." Marcus took a seat in the waiting area, trying to steady his breathing. He could feel the weight of Aaliyah's fear pressing down on him like a lead weight. She was such a spirited girl, full of energy and laughter, and it broke his heart to think of her feeling unsafe. He couldn't let this go unaddressed. Not now. Not ever. After what felt like an eternity, a door swung open, and a middle-aged man in a wrinkled shirt and tie stepped out. He looked weary, as if he had been carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders for far too long. "Mr. Johnson," he called out, scanning the waiting room. When Marcus stood, the man continued, "I'm Tom, the operations supervisor. What seems to be the problem?" "Thank you for coming," Marcus said, his voice steadying as he approached. "I'm here because my daughter, Aaliyah, has been experiencing some alarming behavior from one of your bus drivers." Tom nodded, motioning for Marcus to sit in a small conference room just off the reception area. "Can you please tell me what happened?" Marcus took a deep breath, launching into the story of Aaliyah's distress. He explained how the driver had yelled at her for simply asking to sit with a friend, how the other kids had laughed, and how Aaliyah had come home in tears. "She's afraid to ride the bus now, and this is unacceptable." Tom listened intently, his expression shifting from indifference to concern. "I'm sorry to hear that, Mr. Johnson, but I must admit, we haven't received any complaints about this driver before. Are you sure there wasn't a misunderstanding?" The skepticism in Tom's voice ignited Marcus's anger. "Aaliyah is only 8 years old. She's not prone to making things up, especially not when it comes to something that scares her. I'm telling you, this is a serious issue that needs to be addressed." Tom leaned back in his chair, folding his arms across his chest. "I understand your concern, but without any prior reports, it's hard for us to take immediate action against a driver who has a clean record." Marcus felt his frustration boiling over. "What does it take for you to take me seriously? My daughter is terrified, and you want to brush this off as a misunderstanding? This is exactly the kind of response that perpetuates the problem." "Look," Tom said, raising his hands defensively. I'm not dismissing your daughter's feelings, but we need more evidence to proceed. I can't just take your word for it without any corroboration. Corroboration? Marcus echoed, incredulity lacing his tone. What do you want? A video recording of her being humiliated? A written confession from the driver? This is a child we're talking about. You can't just ignore this because it doesn't fit into your neat little box of procedures. As he spoke, his voice rose, drawing the attention of a few employees passing by. He didn't care. He was past the point of worrying about appearances. He was fighting for his daughter, and he wouldn't let anyone silence him. Tom sighed, glancing at the clock on the wall. I can file a report and look into it, but it may take time to get any results. In the meantime, I recommend you talk to the school and see if any other parents have had similar experiences. Marcus felt a wave of defeat wash over him. He had hoped that the bus company would take immediate action, but it seemed they were more concerned with protocol than with the well-being of the children. I'll do that, he said, his voice low. But you need to understand that this isn't just about Aaliyah. If this driver is behaving this way, he could be affecting other kids too. I assure you, we take these matters seriously, Tom replied, his tone softening slightly. If more complaints come through, we'll address the issue more thoroughly. But right now, I can't take action without evidence. Marcus nodded, feeling the weight of the situation pressing down on him. I understand, but I won't let this go. I'll talk to the school, and I'll make sure that other parents are aware of what's happening. As he stood to leave, Tom offered a half-hearted apology. I hope we can resolve this quickly, Mr. Johnson. Thank you for bringing it to our attention. Marcus walked out of the bus company with a heavy heart, his mind racing. He had hoped for a sense of resolution, but all he felt was frustration and a deep sense of unease. Aaliyah deserved better than this. Better than a system that seemed unwilling to protect her. Once outside, he took a moment to breathe deeply, willing himself to stay calm. He needed to focus on the next steps. His daughter was counting on him, and he would do whatever it took to ensure she felt safe again. Back at home, Aaliyah was sitting cross-legged on the living room floor, surrounded by her coloring books and crayons. She looked up as Marcus entered, her innocent face lighting up momentarily before concern crept back in. Dad, did you talk to them? Marcus knelt beside her, his heart aching at the sight of her uncertainty. I did, sweetie. I spoke to the bus company, but they didn't take it as seriously as I hoped they would. Aaliyah's face fell. So, nothing's going to change? He shook his head, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. Not yet, but I'm going to the school tomorrow. I want to make sure they know what's happening on the bus. And I will talk to other parents too. Will they help? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. They will, Aaliyah. I promise, he said, his tone firm. You're not alone in this. We're going to make sure that you and all your friends feel safe on that bus. Aaliyah looked into her father's eyes, searching for reassurance. What if they don't believe me? They will believe you because you're telling the truth, he replied, his voice steady. Always remember that your feelings are valid, and you have every right to speak up. I'll be with you every step of the way. She nodded slowly, a flicker of hope igniting in her eyes. Okay, Dad, I'll try to be brave. Marcus pulled her into a tight hug, feeling her small body relax against his. You're already brave, Aaliyah. You're stronger than you know. As they sat together on the floor, Marcus felt a renewed sense of determination. He would not let his daughter's fears define her. Together, they would fight for her right to feel safe and cherished, no matter the obstacles in their path. And deep down, he knew that change was possible, one step at a time. Marcus stepped into the school office, a world of fluorescent lights and muted conversations surrounding him. The faint smell of disinfectant mixed with the faint scent of the freshly painted walls, creating an atmosphere that felt oddly sterile. He approached the principal's desk, trying to mask the storm of emotions brewing inside him. Today, he was here to make sure Aaliyah's voice was heard. Mr. Davis, the principal, Mrs. Jenkins, greeted him with a cordial smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Thank you for coming in today. I understand you have some concerns about the bus driver? Yes, I do, Marcus replied, keeping his tone even despite the frustration bubbling just beneath the surface. My daughter, Aaliyah, has been having some troubling experiences on the bus. She feels unsafe due to the driver's behavior. Mrs. Jenkins nodded, her brow furrowing slightly as she listened. I appreciate your concerns, and I want to assure you that we take the safety of our students very seriously. However, I would like to suggest that perhaps Aaliyah might have misinterpreted the driver's actions. Marcus felt his heart quicken at her words. With all due respect, Mrs. Jenkins, Aaliyah is not the type to exaggerate. She's a smart girl, and if she's feeling this way, there's a reason for it. The driver shouted at her in front of her classmates. That's not just a misunderstanding. I understand that, she replied, her voice softening. But we need to approach this with caution. It's important to get all sides of the story before jumping to conclusions. We'll certainly look into it, but I would encourage you to consider that sometimes children can misinterpret situations. Children can misinterpret situations, Marcus echoed, his voice rising slightly. But that doesn't invalidate their feelings. Aaliyah feels unsafe, and that's a serious issue. I'm not here to place blame without evidence, but I do want you to understand how impactful this is for her. Mrs. Jenkins pushed her glasses up her nose and sighed, looking down at her notes. I hear you, Mr. Davis. I do. But perhaps it would be beneficial for you and Aaliyah to speak with the driver directly. Open a line of communication. It might help clear up any misunderstandings. Communicate with someone who has already made my daughter cry. Marcus shot back, incredulity lacing his words. You're telling me to put my child in a position where she has to confront someone who has hurt her? That's not fair. I'm not suggesting you force her into anything, Mrs. Jenkins responded, her voice steady but firm. But sometimes facing our fears can lead to resolution. We can set up a meeting, and I can be present. It might provide an opportunity for Aaliyah to express her feelings. The idea of Aaliyah facing the bus driver sent a wave of anxiety crashing over him. That's not how I want her to learn to deal with this. She shouldn't have to bear the burden of confronting an adult who should know better. Mr. Davis, Mrs. Jenkins said, leaning forward, her tone shifting to one of empathy. I understand your protectiveness. It's natural for a parent to want to shield their child from harm. But my goal is to ensure that Aaliyah feels safe in the school environment. If we can address this directly, it may ultimately empower her. The words hung in the air, and for a moment, Marcus felt the weight of the principal's perspective. He wanted to protect Aaliyah, but he also wanted her to grow strong and resilient. So, what do you suggest? He finally asked, his voice softer now. I suggest we gather some information first, Mrs. Jenkins replied. I will speak with the bus company and the driver, and we can set up a time for a meeting. In the meantime, perhaps you can encourage Aaliyah to express her feelings in a way she feels comfortable, whether that's through writing or art. It's important for her to know that her voice matters. Marcus nodded, appreciating the shift in tone. I will do that. I just want her to know she can speak up without fear. Absolutely, Mrs. Jenkins agreed. I'll follow up with you as soon as I have more information. Thank you for bringing this to my attention, Mr. Davis. We'll work together to ensure a safe environment for Aaliyah and all our students. As he left the principal's office, Marcus felt a mixture of relief and frustration. He was grateful that Mrs. Jenkins was willing to listen, but the thought of Aaliyah confronting her bus driver still weighed heavily on his mind. He knew he needed to talk to her about the meeting and how to navigate her feelings. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow through the kitchen window, Marcus found Aaliyah sitting at the table, her homework spread out before her. She was drawing, her small brow furrowed in concentration. He smiled softly, watching her for a moment before taking a seat across from her. Aaliyah, he began gently, and she looked up, her eyes brightening. Can we talk for a minute? Sure, Dad. She set her crayon down, her attention fully on him. What's up? I talked to your principal today about what happened on the bus, he said, gauging her reaction. She wants to help, and we're going to work together to make sure you feel safe. Aaliyah's expression changed slightly, her enthusiasm tempered by a hint of apprehension. Did she say I could talk to the bus driver? Marcus nodded, choosing his words carefully. Yes, but she wants to make sure that it's safe for you to do that. We can talk about it, and if you feel comfortable, we could set up a meeting with her there to support you. I don't know, Dad, Aaliyah said, her voice small. What if he gets mad at me again? That's a valid fear. Marcus acknowledged, leaning closer. But I want you to remember that you have the right to express how you feel. You're not alone in this. I'll be with you, and Mrs. Jenkins will be there too. Aaliyah bit her lip, her fingers fidgeting with the edge of her drawing paper. What if he doesn't listen? Then we'll find another way to make sure you're heard, he assured her. Your feelings are important, and we're going to make sure you're safe on that bus. But I also want you to learn to stand up for yourself. Speaking up can be scary, but it's also powerful. Do you think I'm brave enough? She asked, her eyes searching his. I think you're one of the bravest people I know, Marcus replied, his voice filled with warmth. You've already shown so much courage by telling me what happened. Just remember, it's okay to feel scared. That doesn't make you weak. Aaliyah nodded slowly, taking a deep breath. Okay, I'll think about it. But what if I want to write him a letter instead? Like you always say, words are powerful. That's a fantastic idea, Marcus exclaimed, his heart swelling with pride. Writing a letter could be a great way for you to express how you feel without having to confront him directly right away. You can take your time and say everything you want to say. Yeah, I can tell him how I felt when he yelled at me and how I just wanted to sit with my friends, Aaliyah said, her enthusiasm returning. I think I'll do that. I can help you if you'd like, Marcus offered. We can brainstorm what you want to say together. Okay, Aaliyah beamed, her earlier fears momentarily forgotten. Can we do it now? Absolutely, Marcus replied, feeling a rush of relief. The conversation had shifted the energy between them, and he was grateful for the opportunity to support her in this way. They spent the next hour working on the letter, with Aaliyah pouring her heart onto the page, each word a testament to her feelings. As they finished, Marcus felt a sense of accomplishment. He had watched his daughter confront her fears, and it filled him with hope. Together, they would navigate this challenging situation, and he would be there every step of the way, teaching her the importance of standing up for herself and others, all while reinforcing that she was never alone. The evening ended with Aaliyah feeling empowered and Marcus filled with determination. The road ahead would not be easy, but they were ready to face it together. Aaliyah sat at her small, colorful desk in her room, the walls adorned with posters of her favorite cartoons and a world map that she had pinned herself. The sunlight streamed through the window, casting a warm glow on her notebook, which lay open before her. Inspired by her father's encouragement and her own desire to speak up, she picked up her pencil and took a deep breath. With each stroke of the pencil, Aaliyah poured her heart onto the page. Dear Ms. Thompson, she wrote, the letters carefully formed, each word chosen with care. I want to tell you about something that happened on the bus. She paused, biting her lip, her thoughts racing. The driver sometimes yells at me and my friends. It makes me feel sad and scared. She could almost hear her father's voice in her head, urging her to be brave, to stand up for herself. I want to feel safe on the bus, just like everyone else. She scribbled down her experiences, detailing the moments that had made her feel small and anxious. As she wrote, her confidence grew. She remembered how her father had listened to her, how he had taken her fears seriously. I hope you can help, she concluded, signing her name with a flourish that signified her determination. Satisfied with her letter, Aaliyah placed it in an envelope and decorated it with stickers of stars and hearts. She hoped that Ms. Thompson would understand, that her words would be taken seriously. After all, if her father could fight for her, she could too. The next day at school, Aaliyah clutched the envelope tightly in her hand, her heart pounding as she approached Ms. Thompson's desk. The classroom buzzed with laughter and chatter, but Aaliyah felt like she was in a bubble, separate from the world around her. When Ms. Thompson noticed her, she smiled warmly and beckoned her over. Good morning, Aaliyah. What's on your mind? Ms. Thompson asked, her voice soft and inviting. Swallowing hard, Aaliyah handed her the envelope, her palms sweating slightly. I wrote you a letter, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Ms. Thompson took the envelope, her expression shifting to one of concern as she opened it. Aaliyah watched anxiously, her stomach twisting in knots. After reading, Ms. Thompson looked up, her brow furrowed. Thank you for sharing this with me, Aaliyah. It's very brave of you to speak up, she said, her tone serious yet compassionate. I just wanted to stop. Aaliyah replied, her voice trembling. "I don't want to feel scared on the bus anymore. I understand, and I will make sure we address this," Ms. Thompson assured her. "You deserve to feel safe and happy while traveling to and from school." As Aaliyah walked away, she felt a mixture of hope and anxiety. Her heart raced with the possibility that things might change. That afternoon, however, the weight of her concerns returned as she rode the bus home, her eyes darting nervously toward the driver. He seemed oblivious, navigating the road with a detached focus, his expression unreadable. The other kids were chatty and loud, but Aaliyah felt isolated, her thoughts consumed by the uncertainty of the outcome. When she arrived home, Marcus was in the kitchen, preparing dinner. The familiar sounds of pots clanging and the aroma of spices filled the air. He turned to her, his face lighting up. "Hey there, superstar. How was school?" Aaliyah shrugged, trying to mask her unease. "It was okay. I talked to Ms. Thompson about the bus." Marcus paused, sensing her hesitation. "And what did she say?" Aaliyah took a deep breath, her courage waning. "She said she'd help. I hope she does." Marcus walked over, kneeling beside her. "You did a brave thing today. Just remember, sometimes it takes time for things to change. But you've taken the first step, and I'm proud of you." His words wrapped around her like a warm blanket, easing the tension in her chest. "I just want to feel safe, Dad," she confessed, her voice small. "I know, sweetheart, and I promise we will do everything we can to make sure you and your friends are safe on that bus," he replied, his tone firm and reassuring. Later that evening, as Marcus cleaned up after dinner, his phone rang. He glanced at the screen and saw it was Ms. Thompson. A flutter of nerves hit him as he answered. "Hello, Ms. Thompson. How are you?" "Hi, Marcus. I wanted to talk to you about Aaliyah's letter," she said, her voice steady but laced with concern. "I appreciate her bravery in coming forward. It's important that we address the issues she raised." Marcus nodded even though she couldn't see him. "Thank you for taking the time to discuss this. It's been really weighing on her, and I'm sure on other kids too. I've spoken to the bus company, and they are open to having a meeting about this. They want to ensure the safety and comfort of all the students," Ms. Thompson explained. "I'll also be addressing the situation with the driver directly. We want to make sure everyone feels heard." "Thank you, Ms. Thompson. It means a lot to us," Marcus replied, feeling a glimmer of hope. "I just want Aaliyah to feel safe when she goes to school. I understand, and I'll do everything in my power to make that happen. Let's keep the lines of communication open, okay? I want to ensure you're updated every step of the way," she said, her tone sincere. "Absolutely," Marcus agreed, his heart feeling lighter. They exchanged a few more pleasantries before hanging up. He took a moment, letting the conversation sink in, feeling the weight of the past few days lifting slightly. When Aaliyah returned from her room, he turned to her with a smile. "Guess what? I just spoke to Ms. Thompson." "What did she say?" Aaliyah asked, her eyes wide with curiosity. "She's going to talk to the bus company and the driver. They want to make sure you and your friends feel safe," Marcus said, his voice steady. Aaliyah's face broke into a grin, her earlier fears momentarily forgotten. "Really? Do you think it will work?" "I believe it will. You did an amazing job speaking up, and now it's our turn to support you. We're a team, remember?" he said, ruffling her hair affectionately. "Yeah, we are," she exclaimed, her confidence returning. "I can't wait to tell my friends." As they settled in for the night, Aaliyah felt a sense of empowerment growing within her. She had taken a step toward change, and it felt good. The conversations with her father and Ms. Thompson had shown her that her voice mattered and that she wasn't alone in this fight. That night, Aaliyah lay in bed, staring at the glow-in-the-dark stars on her ceiling. She thought about what tomorrow would bring. Would things really change on the bus? Would she feel safe again? With those thoughts swirling in her mind, she drifted off to sleep, dreaming of a world where kids could ride the bus without fear, where kindness and understanding reigned supreme. The next morning was bright and sunny, a stark contrast to the turmoil that had clouded Aaliyah's mind for the past few days. As she got ready for school, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. She would face the day with courage, just like her father had taught her. When she arrived at school, Aaliyah noticed a palpable energy in the air. Students were buzzing with excitement, and Aaliyah couldn't help but wonder if news of her letter had spread. As she made her way to her classroom, she spotted Ms. Thompson speaking to a group of parents gathered outside. "Hey, Leah." One of her classmates, Sarah, waved her over. "Did you hear? Ms. Thompson is having a meeting about the bus today. She said she wants to hear what everyone thinks." Aaliyah's heart raced. "I did. I hope they can fix things," she replied, her voice filled with anticipation. "I think they will." "You were really brave to write that letter," Sarah said, admiration shining in her eyes. Aaliyah beamed, feeling a sense of camaraderie with her classmates. They were all in this together, and with their voices combined, change was possible. As the school day progressed, Aaliyah couldn't shake the excitement building inside her. When lunchtime came, she gathered with her friends at their usual table, and they began discussing the upcoming meeting. "Do you think the driver will be there?" asked Jake, his eyes wide with curiosity. "I hope so," Aaliyah replied. "He needs to hear how we feel." "Yeah, we should all say something," chimed in Sarah, her enthusiasm infectious. Aaliyah nodded, feeling empowered by her friend's support. "We can do this together. We all deserve to feel safe." As the bell rang, signaling the end of lunch, Aaliyah and her friends headed to their next class, their spirits high. She felt a sense of unity with her classmates, realizing that they were all fighting for the same cause. The day passed quickly, and soon it was time for the meeting. Aaliyah, along with her classmates and their parents, gathered in the school auditorium. The atmosphere was charged with anticipation as Ms. Thompson took the stage, her presence commanding attention. "Thank you all." The dim light of the school auditorium cast long shadows over the rows of seats filled with parents, teachers, and concerned community members. Marcus sat beside Aaliyah, who fidgeted nervously in her seat, her small hands twisting the hem of her sweater. The air was thick with tension as the parents prepared to discuss the safety of their children on the school bus. Marcus could feel Aaliyah's anxiety radiating off her, and he placed a comforting hand on her back, offering silent support as they waited for the meeting to begin. "Dad, what if they don't listen to us?" Aaliyah whispered, her voice barely audible above the murmurs of the crowd. "They will listen, Aaliyah," Marcus assured her, leaning down so she could see the determination in his eyes. "You've already been brave by speaking up. We're here to make sure your voice is heard." The principal, a tall woman with a stern yet empathetic demeanor, stepped onto the stage, drawing the attention of the room. "Thank you all for coming tonight," she began, her voice steady. "We understand that there have been concerns regarding the safety of students on the bus, and we want to address these issues openly. We encourage everyone to share their experiences and suggestions." As the principal spoke, Marcus's mind raced. He recalled the fear in Aaliyah's eyes when she had first shared her experience with him. He thought of how important it was for her to feel safe and understood, not just by him, but by the entire community. He could see other parents exchanging looks of worry. They understood the gravity of the situation, but uncertainty lingered in the air. One by one, parents stood up to voice their concerns. Some spoke about their children feeling uncomfortable or afraid, while others shared stories of bullying and exclusion. Marcus felt a sense of unity building among the parents as they rallied together to demand change. He knew that Aaliyah's experience was not isolated, and that many children were silently suffering. When it was finally Marcus's turn to speak, he stood up, his heart pounding in his chest. He glanced at Aaliyah, who gave him an encouraging nod. "Good evening, everyone. My name is Marcus, and I'm Aaliyah's father," he began, his voice steady despite his nerves. "I want to talk about the experience my daughter has had on the school bus." He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the room's attention on him. Aaliyah has faced distressing behavior from the bus driver, who has made her feel uncomfortable and scared. "I believe that no child should have to endure this. It's essential for us as a community to ensure that our children feel safe on their way to and from school." The room fell silent, and Marcus could see several heads nodding in agreement. He continued, "We need to address not just the actions of the bus driver, but also the underlying issues of discrimination that may be affecting our children. Open dialogue is crucial if we want to foster a safe and inclusive environment for everyone." As he spoke, Marcus felt a rush of emotion. He was not just advocating for Aaliyah, he was advocating for every child who felt marginalized or afraid. He concluded his statement with a call for action. I urge all of us to work together to ensure our children's safety. We must hold accountable those in positions of authority and provide them with the training they need to understand and support our kids properly. The applause that followed his speech was unexpected but welcomed. Aaliyah beamed with pride, her father's words resonating deeply with her. She felt a surge of empowerment, realizing that her voice mattered, and that her father's advocacy was not just for her, but for every child in the community. Just as the applause subsided, the bus driver, a man in his late 40s with tired eyes and a weary expression, stood up at the back of the auditorium. The atmosphere shifted slightly. The tension returned as eyes turned towards him. Aaliyah's heart raced. She felt a mix of fear and curiosity as he approached the front. I'd like to say a few words, he said, his voice shaky but determined. I'm the bus driver that Aaliyah and some of you have concerns about. The room fell silent. His admission hung heavy in the air. I've been struggling with my own biases, he continued, his voice cracking as he spoke. I know I've made mistakes. I've been dismissive and harsh, and I can see now how it has affected the children I'm meant to protect. Marcus exchanged glances with Aaliyah, who looked surprised. This was not how he expected the evening to unfold. The bus driver took a deep breath, visibly gathering his thoughts. I want to apologize to Aaliyah and to all of you. I've let my own frustrations affect my judgment. I'm committed to changing this. It's time for me to do better. Aaliyah felt a mix of emotions swirling inside her. Part of her wanted to shout, to express the hurt and fear she had felt, but as she watched the bus driver, she sensed an earnestness in his words. He looked genuinely remorseful, and that surprised her. I want to offer a workshop for parents and students, he continued, his voice gaining strength. I believe we need to open a dialogue about our experiences and biases. I want to listen to your concerns and learn how to better support our children. The room erupted into murmurs, some parents expressing skepticism while others seemed intrigued. Marcus felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps this was an opportunity for real change. Aaliyah, too, felt the stirrings of possibility within her. Will you really do that? One mother called out from the back, her voice filled with both anger and hope. How can we trust that things will change? I understand your concerns, the bus driver replied, his eyes scanning the room, searching for understanding. I can't erase the past, but I can promise that I will work hard to earn your trust. I want to create a safe environment for our kids, not just on the bus, but throughout our community. I want to hear your stories, your feelings, and your suggestions. As he spoke, Aaliyah felt a burden lift from her shoulders. His willingness to change, to confront his own shortcomings, ignited something within her. She realized that perhaps healing could begin with open dialogue, with understanding, and a genuine effort to bridge the gaps between their experiences. Marcus looked at Aaliyah, his heart swelling with pride. She had been brave, and now it seemed others were beginning to brave as well. He stood, squeezing Aaliyah's hand gently. I believe this is a step in the right direction, he said, turning to the bus driver. We need to create a space where our children feel safe to express themselves. A workshop could be a great start. Aaliyah nodded in agreement, her spirit lifting. I would like to share my experience during that workshop, she said, surprising herself with her own confidence. It's important for kids to feel heard. The bus driver looked at her, visibly moved. Thank you, Aaliyah. Your voice is powerful, and it's vital that you share it. Together, we can make a difference. As the meeting continued, Aaliyah and Marcus exchanged hopeful glances. While the path ahead would not be easy, the willingness to engage in conversation and confront biases marked a significant turning point for them and their community. They knew that real change was possible, and it began with empathy, understanding, and a commitment to listen to one another. The auditorium began to buzz with discussions, ideas flowing freely as parents and staff considered how to implement the bus driver's proposed workshop. Aaliyah felt a warmth spread through her heart, a sense of belonging and empowerment. She realized that she was not alone in her struggles, and that her voice, alongside the voices of others, could spark change. As the meeting adjourned and parents began to gather their belongings, Marcus leaned down and whispered to Aaliyah, "I'm so proud of you, Aaliyah. You were brave tonight." "Thanks, Dad. I think things might actually change," she replied, a smile breaking across her face. With newfound hope, they walked out of the auditorium hand in hand, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, armed with the knowledge that they could create a safer and more understanding world together.